listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive...
Good luck and Godspeed, ladies.
Let's launch this rocket.
Thrust termination system is armed. T-minus 5, 4, command engine start, 2, 1, ignition.
Yes, that was Katy Perry and an all-star female crew heading into space this morning. The 11-minute flight now etched into our history books. But was it just an elaborate, overindulgent publicity stunt for Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, or a crucial giant leap forward for the future of individual space travel? We chat with one Australian who was on board a similar Blue Origin flight to space and has a fascinating insight into why this experience is life-changing. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Tuesday, the 15th of April. The Greens has cancelled its plans for a rave party on ANZAC Day after heavy criticism from both sides of politics. The event was an election fundraiser and was scheduled to take place at a bar in West Perth next Friday. The Prime Minister and opposition leader this morning calling on the Greens to cancel it. Here is Anthony Albanese.
ANZAC Day is a day of respect for the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice, but also for us to respect the men and women who wear our uniform. I think it's not a day for normal business as usual.
The fundraising party has now been rescheduled, with leader Adam Bandt claiming he wasn't aware of it in the first place. Police are appealing for the public's help after a grandmother was shot in a drive-by shooting in Sydney southwest. The 65-year-old was inside her home at the time when it was peppered with bullets. She sustained a fatal gunshot wound to her leg.
It's abhorrent. Somebody coming up to a house and putting shots off is totally reckless, and the consequences are catastrophic. We have a 65-year-old grandmother that's been shot in the leg by people that walked up and shot at a house.
That was New South Wales Detective Superintendent Grant Healy. A 34-year-old man and a 21-year-old woman were also at the property at the time but were not injured. It's understood the woman was treated by emergency services at the scene but sadly could not be saved. Authorities say they believe the attack was targeted and are now collecting CCTV footage from nearby properties. And new data shows fewer Australians are travelling to the US. US government research showing there's been a 7% drop in Aussies visiting in the month of March compared to last year. The figures also showing a sharp drop in visitors to the US from Europe as countries like China continue updating their travel advice, warning those, especially international students, against travelling to certain parts of the United States. As for us, experts say it's less to do with a weakening dollar and more to do with escalating safety concerns. Now it's time to get into our deep dive with Australian physicist and former NASA engineer Dr Chris Boshuizen on today's history-making all-female spaceflight. On board the Blue Origin rocket was singer Katy Perry, helicopter pilot and Jeff Bezos' fiancée Lauren Sanchez, scientist Amanda Nguyen, former NASA engineer Aisha Bowe, film producer Kerry-Anne Flynn, as well as journalist Gayle King, who kissed the ground after stepping out of the space capsule, greeted by billionaire and owner of Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos.
Yeah! Just appreciate the ground. Thank you, Jesus. That was amazing.
Despite some backlash about today's journey, Chris Boshuizen, who also blasted off into space with US actor William Shatner in 2021 on another Blue Origin flight, says today is a really important step forward in the next era of space travel and will change our world forever. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. We are absolutely thrilled you can give us this very, very rare insight into what space travel is like. You are the third Australian ever to travel to space, and you have been on board one of these Blue Origin space capsules. Tell us, what is it like?
Oh, it's like a life-changing experience. I mean, it's actually really hard to talk about, even though it's been 2.5 years since I flew. I'm still processing the experience. It's a really rich, and I almost feel like it rewired my DNA in a really powerful way. Like I feel like it changed me in a very profound way.
Are you serious? Like, I'm hearing this a lot right now. So it actually literally changed your life. How and why?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I was just, in addition to being the third Australian, I was also human being number 594 who's ever been. Some people might think that's a big number, but if you remember that there's been about 100 million Homo sapiens that have ever existed, 100 billion, sorry, being the 500th and something is nothing. We really haven't lived, no one in the human race has really lived this experience and it's not something we have even words for, really. I find it hard to talk about because we don't have words for it.
So in regards to how it changed your life, do you mean as in this experience is the fact that when you actually entered into space, or is it a physical or emotional changing experience? Try and describe it. I know you've just said.
It's all of those, yeah. So, well, there were two things I remember, if I can just share those with you. There was looking out at the atmosphere of the Earth, and to me it looked like this blue sapphire, almost like a blue laser beam of light on, surrounding the Earth. And that was a really profound image of seeing the Earth. And, astronauts talk a lot about this. They call it the overview effect, as in like you're looking down and you suddenly see everything, where we came from. And I had this real thought that every human being that ever has lived is right in front of me. All of them. And that was really moving. And then the really strange thing was when I looked out the window into the blackness of space and I felt a voice calling me. If I could have opened the door and walked out, I would have. It was a
what
really
do you mean,
profound.
some type of voice?
Well, like it was like almost like some, I don't know, like something inside my chest, just like this really powerful force was just compelling me. And it wasn't words that I could hear in my ears. It was just this message, which was keep going. And I feel like some kind of explorer gene in something or something like that inside me switched on. And it was a really profound, I'm not religious at all, but I think I finally understood how the ancients had religious experiences looking at comets or looking at a solar eclipse and thinking that was a god or something. I really felt this powerful call to just keep exploring deeper into space. And that changed my life in a second.
So was it kind of like an out-of-body experience? We always talk about life being out there. Do you think another life is out there?
Well, I'm certain that there is life around other planets. There has to be. I mean, there's so many galaxies with so many stars with so many planets. There has to be something out there. But I think I've realized that we need to go look. We need one of the reasons to go to space is to answer that question. We need to keep exploring.
You make a great point there, Chris, because there has been, some criticism after this extraordinary flight involving this all-female crew. Some people have said, why are we doing this? They've criticised them saying they had full makeup on and it wasn't really about female empowerment. It was just a big publicity spiel, especially for Jeff Bezos. What would you say to that?
Well, I think, space, has always had this tension in society of like, should we or should we not do it? And I think to many people, it does seem like a waste of money. I remember, I live in the United States right now. During the Apollo program going to the moon, that was at the height of civil unrest in the United States and also the middle of the Vietnam War. And so, there was a lot of tension. Should we go to space? Why are we spending money on going to the moon when we could do all these other things? And I think it's not an either or argument. You can do both. And I think still going out and understanding science, understanding our role in the universe, developing technologies to improve life on Earth, those are all important things. And I think it is certain that one day in the future, whether it's this year or 100 years from now, the human race will live and work in space. And we will get a lot of benefit from that. It'll be a great sort of, I call it like growing up, like, when you were a teenager and you leave home and go to university and you have to learn to make your own bed because there's no one to tell you to do that anymore. I feel like going to space is that for the human race, where one day we'll actually grow up and stop making a mess in our own home and learn how to fend for ourselves and mature and grow up. And for me, space has always been about the human race growing up and putting our first steps outside of our doorstep and seeing the great universe that's out there. And I think we're only better for it. We all benefit when we do things like this.
Chris, if I can play you some audio, it's from a US actress,
Yeah.
Olivia Munn, who criticised this space journey earlier before it actually took off. And she said it's about, why are we talking about, journeys somewhere else and creating new life in space rather than cleaning up the mess we've left here in Earth. If I can just play you this quick bit of audio, and I'd love to know your thoughts.
I just think about, I know this is probably obnoxious, but it's so much money to go to space.
Yeah. Yes.
And there's a lot of people who can't even afford eggs.
So that's a pretty, simple analogy, but we've got a cost of living crisis, especially in the States right now. What's going on? What would your answer to that be?
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about why this is important at this point in time and why I was excited to take part in is things are changing. So it's not as expensive as she thinks. And it used to be that it took an entire nation state, like a country, like the USSR or, the United States of America to send a single astronaut into space. And now, fast forward 60 years into our sort of journey into space, a private company can do that, which is really profound. It is a new thing. And it's not $1 billion to send a person anymore. And I think in short order, it'll be maybe the price of a ticket somewhere. Maybe instead of an overseas trip, you could actually go to space. So costs are coming down, and this is like the beginning of a whole new chapter for the human race. And okay, so it's still expensive, but it's not price of a nation expensive anymore. That is a big change. And I think we'll see, like I said earlier, maybe in the next year, decade, or 100 years, things will become accessible. People will travel to space frequently, and it'll become normal, and we'll just be doing our business in space. So I don't think, there's always a transition where you have to go from being expensive to being cheap, and we're in the middle right now. And I personally think, and certainly for me, to be a guinea pig to get on this fairly untested rocket and, sort of risk my own life to do this, I believe enough in that mission that I think it's worth doing. And I think the benefits outweigh the cost in the long run.
Chris, you mentioned there about risking your life. We saw this successful space mission and capsule land safely back on Earth with this all-female crew. But just how dangerous is it?
Probably now about as dangerous as riding a motorbike. It's not, not as safe as being in a car and not as risky as jumping off a building on a parachute. So it's kind of in the middle. And, this, I think it was the 11th crewed flight, I think they did today with actual, passengers on, and they have a larger number of flights. So you have to remember, this is fairly new, right? It's not like a passenger airplane that's been flying for thousands of flights every year and with decades of flight experience. This is a new rocket from a new company on its 11th flight with passengers. And so, one way to look at it is it's a 1 in 11. They've had 0 failures in 11 flights. So odds are better than 1 in 12. But when I was doing my own flight, I had to do some numbers myself to try and work out, was I comfortable to get on it? And I worked out, 3 years ago, my guess was it was about 1 in 200 chance of this thing blowing up and me dying. And again, why do I think this is worth it? For me, my passion and my belief that space is important, I was willing to take a 1 in 200 chance with my life to prove a point that the doors to space are opening and it is worth going.
Sorry, I was about to say, Chris, those doors are opening. How expensive is it to walk through that door? Because with this actual trip, no one is mentioning how much the tickets were or who paid for the tickets. So how expensive is this to get a seat on this life-changing space capsule?
Yeah, Blue Origin doesn't publish a price list, so you'd have to ask them. But it's less. It's not the price of the GDP of any one country. Let me tell you that.
Okay,
less than that.
So in regards, you mentioned earlier, I want to come back to this, Chris, because I think this is extraordinary. You were referring to the overview effect. For you, you had this out-of-body, life-changing experience. I want to play you some audio from Katy Perry, who apparently sang a song, What a Wonderful World It Is, while she was in space. But then she came back down to Earth, and after landing safely, she kissed the Earth as she, arrived back on safe land. And then she gave these comments. I want you to take a listen to them.
I feel super connected to love. So connected to love. I think this experience has shown me you never know how much love is inside of you, like how much love you have to give and how loved you are until the day you launch.
Is she having that overview effect, or she's just very tired and emotional?
No, I mean, I definitely felt that too. I think it's very real. You know, my crew, there were 4 of us, a gentleman, Glenn DeVries, who sadly passed away a few years ago, and then Audrey Powers, who worked at Blue Origin, and myself and William Shatner. And we were bawling our eyes out on the descent when the parachute's coming out. And when we landed, we didn't even want to go outside yet. We just needed to get together. And we had the 4 of us, we suddenly became family. And we had a group hug. We were sobbing. We got in the middle of the capsule in the middle of the desert there. And before they opened the doors, all gave each other a big hug for about a minute, just really trying to just connect and sort of still live in that experience of what we just witnessed. You know, as human beings, 594, 95, 96, and 97, right? It's crazy. Like, it was a very rare and treasured experience that we shared together, and definitely felt this strong connection after the flight.
So, Chris, finally, what would you say to the critics that are saying this Blue Origin, this latest expedition, was just a massive publicity stunt that really wasn't about female empowerment?
I think they look great, and I think if they can wear whatever you want in space. I mean, you know, it's spaces for everybody, right? And you know, I used to do a lot of conferences where we'd invite different people from different disciplines to come to space, and I always said, you know, we're going to need space dentists, space plumbers, and unfortunately, space lawyers. So everybody is welcome, and they look great, and if that's what they want to do, it's more power to them, right? I think they looked amazing, and I know they designed their own spacesuits for this flight. But, you know, also on just the female aspect, it's amazing to see an all-female flight. When I did my flight, my partner Vanessa was telling them, you should fly an all-female flight because space has flown a lot of men, and there's been a lot of male-only flights. And I think this is cool, and I hope it's not the last.
Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tosh. Appreciate chatting to you today.
And that was Chris Boshuizen. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss our episodes or our deep dive of the day. You can also follow us on our socials, on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and on TikTok and YouTube. You just need to search Listener Newsroom, which is LISTNR. And we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company. See you then.